I'm delighted to be joined now by one of the country's leading public servants, a man I think is absolutely integral to the success of this country at this pivotal moment in our history. He is the chairman of the House Oversight Committee. He's Congressman Darrell Issa. He is a former member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee. He, along with Senator Chuck Grassley, conducting an investigation into the botched Justice Department ATF operation called Fast and Furious. Congressman Issa, great to have you back with us.
Well, Lou, thanks for having me back on, and thanks for your years of being the champion on so many issues, including helping us get the word out on the real threats to the future of America.
Well, Congressman, thank you. Let's start with, first of all, I've got to start with the fact that you send a letter off to the White House demanding the records, all records, I believe was the expression in the letter, pertaining to a number of national security folks and Operation Fast and Furious. And then within, what was it, two days, suddenly there's an ethics complaint allegation filed by a left-wing advocacy group against you. Pure coincidence?
No, they've been working on it for a long time. And, it's amazing. Their ethics complaint that they say they're going to file today alleges things that have already been debunked and apologized for in some cases, or at least clarified by the New York Times. But this is one of those things. Professional politics is like professional baseball. If they think you're crowding the plate, might hit a home run, they're going to put a ball right at your chin.
Right.
And that just goes with the turf. But the issues that my committee is responsible for, the men and women who serve both on staff and the members of Congress, they're not going to be brushed back. We're not going to be brushed back on getting done what needs to be done on the Postal Reform. We're certainly not going to let Brian Terry's family continue to suffer a denial that his life was taken by people who should not have had those guns, who got them at the bequest specifically of the Justice Department's attempt to deliberately send weapons to Mexico in the hopes that they would be recovered at crime scenes and thus could be traced. Well, they were recovered at crime scenes. We don't know where they were between the time they left a gun store and the time they killed Brian Terry. What we do know is they shouldn't have been at that scene because the people trafficking in them could have been arrested before they ever left practically the store, certainly the state.
It's staggering, this Operation Fast and Furious and what has transpired. Has the White House cooperated in any way in giving you the information that you've now requested?
They really haven't cooperated at all. What they have done is periodically said they will cooperate, but so far we have never received a document that is as good or as sufficient as the ones that whistleblowers have given us. I just met with the head of our protection unit within the government for whistleblowers because I have a number of ATF agents who absolutely deserve whistleblower status. We want to make sure to not retaliate against even former Director Ken Milson, who came forward and gave us specific testimony to show that this wasn't an ATF project alone, just the opposite. Justice authorized it, formed the task force, and funded a very wrong-minded attempt to trace weapons.
And Congressman Milson, reassigned, not fired, he's sort of in purgatory in the federal system, isn't he?
He is, and this is sort of the sad reality. He was by all accounts, a great assistant U.S. attorney and U.S. attorney. He got this job, should have been the pinnacle of his career, but 1,800 people in law enforcement, he was not equipped to keep an eye on these things, and quite frankly, many of the things he learned too late were kept from him. And that's one of the things we're investigating is why is it the head of ATF doesn't know what he should know? And oh, by the way, why is it Eric Holder, who went to Mexico and made a speech before this program began describing this new initiative, at least in broad terms, never says he was briefed on it after it began until long after Senator Grassley and myself began investigating this failed program.
Ken Milson, and to be clear, we're talking about the man who was the acting head of the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms Agency. Ken Milson, was this an effort? Is this an effort by the Justice Department, in your judgment, to keep him from having whistleblower status, to keep him from stepping forward as a cooperative witness before your committee's investigation?
Well, he's been a cooperative witness, and I expect he'll continue to be. And but I think it's part of they're trying to find people at the lowest possible level to blame. First, they tried to blame the gun stores.
Right.
Then they tried to blame the ATF field agents. Then they began going after the low-level U.S. attorney, assistant U.S. attorney personnel. Little by little, they're creeping up to somebody who's going to have to say, yes, I'm a political appointee. Yes, I authorized this program. And no, I won't tell you what was going on in my mind, because I don't think we'll ever know what their real motivations were for approving and funding something this stupid.
You know, people have got to be wondering. I mean, the scope of this is so large. It is a complex operation. But we're talking about as well, the U.S. attorney in Phoenix has resigned his post.
Yes.
And we're told with great pain in his heart and sorrow in his heart. But the fact is, apparently, information has been withheld by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Phoenix, and it looks like some of that is going to return directly to him, and for which he will be held accountable.
No question, there will be some legitimate incrimination of the U.S. Attorney, of the acting ATF director. But there's some good news, and I think I know we don't always deal in good news. These cases have been transferred to San Diego, which means the U.S. Attorney, not tainted by the bad thinking that went into it, will now look at prosecuting, and specifically we're interested in seeing the gun trafficking portion elevated to murder, because, in fact, the felony murder of Brian Terry was done because of weapons that a group of felons made sure got to the wrong people. That wasn't going to happen in Arizona. They didn't want to make that connection. They didn't want to blow, quote, their cooperating criminals, but we need to do that. But there's more than that, and in the days and weeks to come, what you're going to see is that there were additional bad guys who the FBI and Justice allowed to continue doing what was wrong as part of this program. And there's one thing we rely on, which is you don't let criminals continue committing crimes because, quote, they're also whistleblowing or they're also helping you.
Or informants.
Or informant. And clearly there's a difference between an informant and one of the bosses operating criminal activities, and that's why this investigation can't end until we get cooperation.
And you sure as hell don't allow the bad guys to continue to use weapons that have been smuggled under the auspices and to the authority of the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agency, and which they completely lost track of.
You're absolutely right. And I don't often say this, and I know sometimes our relationships with our neighbors to the south are strained, but the Mexican people and the Mexican government have a right to real righteous indignation to say, we're trying to cooperate more than ever before, and now you have betrayed us by these weapons coming in and ultimately killing far more Mexicans than they will Americans.
They have killed. I mean, some of the estimates rise to 150 people who've been killed, 150 Mexican citizens who've been killed as a result of this operation. Do you think the number is an exaggeration?
I know that the number will rise well beyond that. But even other things, I mean, I saw the parts of a downed helicopter when I was in Mexico City that was hit with 50 caliber rounds that undoubtedly came from one of these sniper rifles. You understand, in Fast and Furious, one less 50 caliber sniper rifle, 37, went to Mexico. 38 is what an entire Marine regiment takes to Afghanistan or Iraq. This is a tremendous amount of firepower, and the snipers there are primarily using it to down aircraft and to disable vehicles at great distance, giving them a huge advantage over what they'd normally have.
Well, maybe we should be clear about what a 50 caliber rifle is. A 50 caliber rifle fires these gigantic rounds, and I'm talking. These shells are
They're
four times the
long.
size of a 30. I'm sorry, Congressman.
They're about 4 inches long, and they will penetrate armor, including an armored personnel carrier. They are very dangerous.
And they go, and they will travel 4.5 miles, folks. This is a powerful, powerful weapon, and the fact that anyone in the United States government condoned, permitted, allowed through either ignorance or incompetence or a combination of those qualities, these kinds of weapons to fall into the hands of the drug cartels, there has to be an accounting. And that is precisely what Congressman Darrell Issa and Senator Chuck Grassley are insisting upon. Fair statement?
Fair statement, and it's our obligation. Right now I'm I'm trying to do reforms in government, hold back regulations, help people get their entrepreneurial ambitions recognized. But, all of that takes a back seat to losses of our freedom that occur when government does the wrong thing and then starts putting additional restrictions on based on their wrongdoing. In the southern 4 states, they're now severely limiting and building a big database of anyone who tries to buy 2 weapons. Now, they justify this whole thing based on what they essentially did in Fast and Furious.
Right. By the way,
yes.
the NRA has said they are going to fight this. Am I mistaken? The NRA has filed suit on this, supporting
I believe they have.
I think it was either their intention or that they would.
And it's very clear that this is a unintended, or let me rephrase it, something which Congress has specifically limited. We do not allow ATF or other organizations to build databases of gun buyers, and that's what they're doing in these southern 4 states. And they're very definitely doing it as a result of the very violence that they created with Fast and Furious. So
may I just make this a statement? And you don't need to make any remark. I want to try to get in at least 30 seconds on your Postal Reform Act. But let me just say this: the Obama administration, when it comes to the Operation Fast and Furious, when it comes to gun control, and what they are attempting to regulate without legislative support or approval, is absolutely scary as hell. And I will turn now I will turn now to postal reform, if I may, Congressman. We're out of time, but where do you stand, and what will happen to you?
We have a good bill. We expect to be marking it up and adding some additional features to it in about 2 weeks. But it boils down to this: the post office is losing $10 billion a year. They could be making $7 or $8 billion a year without a rate increase and without lowering the pay of any postal worker except those who would be retired, fully eligible, fully retired, to get the amount of laborers necessary in line with the real revenue. Simple. Any business would have done it years ago. We're going to mandate it in our legislation so they start acting like a business unit so they can actually deliver the kind of service that we expect from UPS and FedEx and do it at a reasonable price.
And hundreds of thousands of jobs be preserved.
Hundreds of thousands of jobs being preserved. The kind of service people expect, where every place in America gets their mail and gets it reliably. But at the same time, you can't do it with 600,000 workers and expect to break even when you really only need 380,000 workers.
We're going to call it the Issa Jobs Act for America. Congressman, great to have you with us. Thank you so much. Congressman Darrell Issa.